Let's talk about the output of our build process. One of the parts of our CI process is actually packaging up our changes in our code for use downstream in deployments. Now, the way we do this is different than application code. In application code, typically the compilation process does this for us. It builds a DLL or an exe file or a jar file or something else, and we just copy that and store that in our repository. However, in our world, in database development, we have two different choices of how we package up our code, depending on whether we're doing state-based or migration-based development. Now, just as the build process kind of dictates how we store things in version control, our deployment process or our release process is going to dictate how we package this output, because we'll eventually have to consume that in the release process and deploy it out to our systems. So let's look at each of our development methodologies and then see how we output packages. In the state-based process, when we do an output package, we don't get any compiled code. We don't get any binary code that we could use. Instead, what we really need to do is get the state of the objects from version control at that point in time, because we're going to use those in a state-based comparison with downstream environments. So in this case, from our version control system, what we'd really want to do is pull the state of every object. And typically we'll separate those out into some organized format, as we did in version control, tables in one area, stored procedures, functions, views, everything in their own separate area, each one named appropriately, so that when we perform the state-based comparison, we can do so. The exact format we use here will depend on which comparison tool we use. What's the technology that we're going to use to generate the deployment script? That will dictate how we store this here. In a migration-based world, it's slightly different. Here we don't have to make those decisions. We know how we're going to deploy this code. We're going to execute each script. Now, we may not execute all of them, but we certainly will execute some of them. So our output in this case will be taking each one of those scripts from version control and capturing in our build package. We may not capture every script from the beginning of development here. That will depend on our development paradigm, how we're deploying to clients. Do we have clients at multiple different versions? We may baseline at different points so that the number of scripts is manageable. But however we decide to do this, we will capture a number of scripts in order and we'll package them up for output later. Either one of these methods work. Again, you have to look at how you'll deploy this code later on to decide what your build output will be.